Imagine, for a moment, that you are lying beneath the quiet sky of the north. The stars glimmer faintly above you, scattered like silver sparks across an endless velvet expanse. The air is cool, crisp, and still. In the distance, you can almost hear the low hum of the wind passing through pine trees, the soft whisper of a river finding its way between stones. It is night, and the world feels hushed, as though it is pausing to invite you into a story. A story not meant to frighten or startle, but to gently guide your thoughts away from the noise of the day and toward the slow rhythm of a different time, an older time, when gods and spirits walked among men, and every mountain, every stream, every shadow held a meaning. In that time, there was a goddess, or perhaps it is better to call her a queen, a figure who stood between two realms, her body itself a strange reflection of opposites. One side alive, the other dead, a being of paradox, balance, and inevitability. Her name was Hel. She ruled over the place where most souls were said to travel after life had faded from them. Not the glorious battlefield halls of Valhalla, not the shining fields of Folkvanga, but the quiet, misty expanse beneath the roots of the great world tree. She was the queen of the Underworld, the keeper of endings, and yet she was never painted as a villain in the old myths. Rather, she was something far more unsettling and far more calming. She was certainty. She was a reminder that no matter how brightly one's life may burn, there comes a time when every flame grows low and rests. Tonight, we will drift together into her story. We will move slowly, like the steady current of a cold river. At times, we will pass through myths told in smoky halls by poets long ago. At other times, we will pause, as though resting by a fire, to reflect on what these tales meant to the people who carried them, and what they might mean to us now. There will be gods and monsters, battles and bargains, sorrow and silence, but all told in a way that allows your mind to drift softly, as if between waking and dreaming. Like a candle burning low, this story will glow steadily until the moment arrives when your eyes become too heavy to remain open. The mythology of Hel is, in many ways, one of the more unusual chapters of the Norse world. So many of the stories from that time are fierce and fiery, filled with the clash of steel and the roar of thunder. Odin's quest for wisdom, Thor's battles with giants, Loki's clever tricks. These are tales of struggle and energy, tales that rouse the blood. But the story of Hel is different. It is quieter. It asks us to step away from the noise of battle and into the stillness of endings. It is, in some ways, less about adventure and more about acceptance. And perhaps that is why it unsettles us, because silence can sometimes be more unnerving than chaos. Yet, silence is also what we most need when the day is long and sleep feels far away. So, as we begin, think of this less as a lecture, less as a recitation of facts and names, and more as a gentle walk. We will move together through a mythic landscape where snow falls lightly and rivers run cold, where gods look upon their strange destinies with both awe and dread, where a queen waits in the shadows, her expression unreadable, her presence inevitable. She is not here to harm. She is not here to comfort. She simply is. And in her being, there is something we can learn. The old Norse poets, who spoke and sang these stories, did not always write them down. Instead, they passed them from mouth to mouth, fire to fire, across long winters and restless seas. And so, the figure of Hel comes to us as a patchwork of glimpses, sometimes a shadow, sometimes a name, sometimes a description that feels more like a riddle than a portrait. She is a mystery, and mysteries are best approached slowly. Tonight, we will take our time. This journey will lead us through the strange origins of Hel, the child of a trickster and a giantess. We will see how she was cast into the underworld, and how she shaped that realm into her own. We will linger on the stories of those who entered her halls, and the one famous tale of when the gods tried to bring someone back from her care. We will drift toward the great prophecy of Ragnarok, when Hel and her army would rise. And finally, we will step back and reflect, gently, on what such a myth can mean for us now, how it whispers to us about mortality, stillness, and the peace of release. As you listen, Let your mind wander where it wishes. Perhaps you imagine icy rivers and dark caverns. Perhaps you see candlelight flickering against wooden beams in a Viking hall. Or perhaps you see nothing at all, just the comfortable dark behind your eyes. All are fine. The story will carry itself, slowly, steadily, like the low beat of a distant drum. You need not hold on to every detail. You need only allow the rhythm of the words to carry you, and to remind you that rest is near. And so, let us begin the tale of Hel, queen of the underworld. Not in haste, but in calm steps. The night is long, and there is time. When we think about the myths of the North, it is easy to imagine thunder and lightning, fierce battles and gods with weapons in hand. But underneath those dramatic tales lies a quieter foundation, the Norse vision of the universe itself. Before we can understand Hel, before we can imagine the hall she ruled or the stillness she embodied, we must first understand the world she belonged to. The Norse did not see the cosmos as a simple place. It was vast, layered, and deeply mysterious, a web of realms all connected by the great tree Yggdrasil. To drift into their worldview is to step into a map unlike any we know today, a map drawn not on parchment but in story, song, and memory. At the very heart of this universe stood Yggdrasil, the world tree. Imagine an immense ash tree, so large that its roots dig into the deepest, darkest waters, and its branches spread wide enough to touch the sky. This tree was not simply a symbol. It was the structure of reality itself. All 9 realms of existence were cradled in its branches and roots, each world different from the others, yet all connected. The tree was alive, ever growing, ever suffering. Its leaves shook in the wind of time, and creatures made their homes upon it. An eagle at the top, a serpent gnawing at the roots, a squirrel darting up and down carrying whispers and insults. Even in stillness, the tree was busy. Even in strength, it carried wounds. In many ways, Yggdrasil reflected the Norse view of life itself, fragile, resilient, endlessly turning. The 9 realms were not laid out like a map you could fold and carry. Instead, they were woven like threads of a tapestry, each with its own character, its own rhythm. There was Asgard, the shining realm of the gods, where Odin ruled and the Aesir held their feasts. There was Midgard, the world of humans, surrounded by a vast serpent in the sea. There was Jotunheim, the land of the giants, cold and untamed. Vanaheim, the home of the Vani gods, associated with fertility and prosperity. Alfheim, bright and strange, where the elves dwelled. Svartalfheim, dark and subterranean, home to dwarfs who crafted wonders. Muspelheim, a world of fire and flame, blazing and destructive. Niflheim, its opposite, a world of ice, frost, and swirling mist. And finally, there was Helheim, often considered part of Niflheim, the realm that belonged to Hel herself, where the dead lingered in silence. For the Norse, this arrangement was not abstract philosophy. It was how they explained the endless cycle of life and death, of warmth and cold, of light and shadow. They live in a landscape of extremes, summers of long daylight, winters of deep darkness, seas both generous and merciless. Their worldview reflected that harsh but balanced reality. Life was precious because it was fleeting, ornamented because death was inevitable. The realms of the dead were not far away. They were woven into the same tree that supported the living. To understand this cosmos was to feel both the fragility and the weight of existence. It is in this web of realms that Helheim takes its place. Nestled deep within the roots of Yggdrasil, Hel's domain was not fiery, nor was it a place of torment as later traditions might imagine. Instead, it was shadowed, cold, and quiet. The word Hel itself comes from a root meaning to cover or to conceal. It was a hidden place, a realm not easily glimpsed by the living. If Valhalla was filled with the sound of drinking horns and warriors boasting of battles, Helheim was the opposite, hushed, slow, and still. It was the destination of most souls, the farmers, the mothers, the children, the old men who died in their beds. Not glorious, not shameful, simply human. In this way, Helheim was not a punishment, but an inevitability. The Norse imagination did not draw a sharp line between their world and the world of spirits. Instead, the two bled into each other, like fog drifting across a field. The wind carried whispers of the unseen. The stones and rivers held memories of those who had passed on. When someone died, their presence did not vanish but moved into another realm of the tree. Their absence was felt, yes, but their existence was not gone. This closeness between the living and the dead gave rise to rituals, offerings, and stories that acknowledged the bond between both worlds. The Underworld was not feared in the same way it would later be under Christian influence. It was simply the other side of the path, a place every traveler would one day walk. Yggdrasil itself also taught a lesson, that no part of existence was free from strain. Beneath its roots lay venomous serpents and dark waters. Its bark was chewed by deer and insects. Its branches stretched toward the heavens but also bore the weight of storm and frost. In the same way, human life was never without hardship, never without loss. The gods themselves, powerful as they were, could not escape this truth. They too were woven into the fabric of the tree. They too would meet their fate at Ragnarok. To live in the Norse world was to accept that life and death, joy and sorrow, growth and decay were all threads of one great tapestry. No thread could exist without the others. When we place Hel into this vision, she becomes less of a frightening figure and more of a natural counterpart to life itself. She ruled not with cruelty but with inevitability. She was the balance to Valhalla's glory, the answer to Midgard's restless striving. Just as the seasons turned from summer to winter, so too did lives turn toward her halls. The Norse did not look away from this truth. They acknowledged it in their stories, faced it in their rituals, and wove it into their understanding of the world. Death was not an interruption. It was a continuation, a step further along the branches and roots of Yggdrasil. As we drift deeper into this mythic landscape, imagine the tree itself, vast and ancient, its leaves whispering in the wind. Imagine its roots plunging into cold waters, its branches brushing against stars. Somewhere within those roots lies a hall of shadows, ruled by a queen both living and dead. But before we descend fully into her realm, we must first pause here, at the edge of the map, and see how the Norse saw their world. Only then can we follow the path that leads us downward, into the mists where Hel waits, patient and unyielding. In the north, where fire and ice once met to create the world, gods and giants were bound together in endless struggle. But out of that struggle also came strange unions, and from those unions came children who did not belong to one side or the other. Some were celebrated, others feared, and some were cast away. Among the most unusual of these children was Hel, the daughter of Loki, the trickster, and Angroda, a giantess of the wild ironwood. Her story begins not in grandeur or triumph, but in suspicion, dread, and the kind of uneasy acceptance that comes when something cannot be ignored. Hel's father, Loki, was already a complicated figure in the Norse tales. He was clever, quick-witted, and endlessly mischievous. At times, he helped the gods, saving them from dangers they could not solve on their own. At other times, he betrayed them, weaving chaos and pain into their lives. Loki was neither fully enemy nor fully friend. He was the necessary trickster, the unpredictable spark that unsettled the world. Her mother, Angroda, lived far from Asgard, in the wilderness of Jotunheim. Her name meant the one who brings grief, and she herself was shrouded in mystery. From their union came 3 children who would shape the fate of gods and men: the wolf Fenrir, the serpent Jormungandr, and Hel. Fenrir, the wolf, grew so large and powerful that the gods feared he would one day devour the sun. Jormungandr, the serpent, was cast into the sea, where he grew so vast that he encircled the entire world, biting his own tail. And Hel was unlike any child they had ever seen. From birth, she bore the mark of duality. One half of her body appeared normal, as though she were a young girl with pale skin and living flesh. The other half was lifeless, dark, and decayed, as if death itself had claimed her from the moment she entered the world. She was not entirely of the living, nor entirely of the dead. She was both at once. and for the gods, that was something they could not look upon without unease. It is said that when Odin, the All-Father, learned of Loki's monstrous children, he was deeply troubled. Prophecy weighed heavily on him, for Odin was always seeking knowledge of the future. He knew that these children would play a role in Ragnarok, the final destruction of the world. Fear drove him to act. Each of Loki's children was dealt with in turn. The serpent was hurled into the sea, where it would grow until it encircled Midgard. The wolf was kept close at first, but as his strength grew, the gods bound him in chains, betraying him despite the bond of friendship he had once shared with Tyr. In Hel, Odin cast her away, sending her down into the misty depths beneath Yggdrasil, commanding her to rule over those who died not in battle, but of sickness, old age, and misfortune. And so Hel descended into the shadows, banished yet crowned, feared yet given power. The gods may have sought to be rid of her, but in sending her to the Underworld, they gave her dominion over a realm no one else could claim. What began as exile became sovereignty. In her dark halls, she held sway over countless souls, her half-living gaze fixed on all who entered. She was not tender, but she was not cruel either. She was as she was born, half warmth, half coldness, a keeper of balance, a figure of inevitability. For those who saw her, Hel must have been a haunting presence. Imagine a figure cloaked in shadow, her living side soft and human, her dead side pale and skeletal. To look at her was to be reminded of life's fragile thread, of how swiftly beauty and strength could give way to silence. Yet, within that unsettling image was also a truth the Norse people accepted deeply. Life and death are not enemies, but halves of the same whole. In Hel's very body, that truth was made flesh. Her siblings were forces of chaos, destined to tear apart the world in fire and fang. Hel, however, was different. She did not strike, did not bite, did not coil around the earth and menace. Instead, she waited, patient, still, unyielding. If Fenrir was the unstoppable hunger of destruction, and Jormungandr the vast inevitability of time encircling all things, Hel was the stillness at the end of every life. She was the pause after the final breath, the silence after the last word. And unlike her brothers, she did not need to rage or roar. She already knew her place would never be empty. The other gods may not have loved her, but they could not deny her power. They looked upon her with dread, for she held sway over the great majority of souls. While a warrior's afterlife might be sung of in poetry, most people did not die with sword in hand. Most lives ended quietly, on a bed, in illness, in the slow fading of age. And all those lives belonged to her. She was not celebrated in the mead halls of Asgard, but she was ever present, always near, her realm swelling with those who passed unseen. The very name Hel carried weight. In Old Norse, it meant hidden or covered, a place concealed from the world of the living. Over time, that name would echo into later languages, transformed and reshaped, but always tied to the same idea of the unseen world of the dead. She was both a figure and a place, both a queen and a realm. To speak her name was to invoke the land beyond the grave, a place everyone knew and no one wished to see too soon. In this way, Hel was not only Loki's daughter. She was also a mirror held up to every person, a reminder that within each of us lies that same balance. Life on one side, death on the other, separated by nothing more than time. Her presence in the myths is brief compared to other gods, but her impact is deep. She stands quietly at the edges of the stories, waiting, patient, unmoving, while battles rage and destinies unfold. She does not need to fight for importance. She is important simply because she exists. And so, the strange child of Loki and Angrboda became the queen of the Underworld, banished from the world above, yet given her own kingdom below. A figure half alive, half dead, embodying a truth no one could deny. Her siblings were bound in chains or hurled into the sea, but she found her throne in the shadows, where countless souls would one day bow before her, not in worship, but in quiet surrender. Hel was, and always would be, the silent answer to every question of life's ending. And it is in that silence, unsettling and steady, that we find the beginnings of her myth. The story of Hel cannot be separated from the story of her brothers. Together, the three children of Loki and Angrboda formed a trio of beings so strange, so unsettling, that even the gods themselves were shaken by their presence. They were called monsters, but that word can be misleading. They were not simply beasts of chaos. Each carried a role, a weight in the fabric of fate, and no matter how hard the gods tried to avoid it, those roles would come to pass. The tale of their births, and the gods' reactions to them, is one of the darker threads in the tapestry of Norse myth. It reveals not only fear, but also prophecy, control, and the inevitability of destiny. Loki himself was never a simple figure. To the Izu, he was at times indispensable, using his quick mind and shape-shifting trickery to rescue them from dangers beyond their strength. Yet they also knew that his heart did not truly belong to them. He was bound to the giants through his blood, and in Angrboda, the giantess of the Ironwood, he found a companion who reflected his own chaotic spirit. Their union was not one of harmony, but of wildness. And from that union came children who would terrify even Odin, who had seen more than any other. The first was Fenrir, a wolf of such size and ferocity that even as a pup he was stronger than any ordinary beast. His eyes glowed with a hunger that seemed endless, and his jaws could crush bone with ease. The gods took him in at first, raising him among them, but as he grew, so did their dread. They whispered of prophecies that told of Fenrir devouring Odin himself when Ragnarok came. The second was Jormungandr, a serpent cast into the sea. He grew so quickly, so impossibly vast, that he soon circled the entire world, biting his own tail. He lay beneath the waters of Midgard, unseen yet ever present, his coiled body keeping constant pressure on the world above. And then there was Hel, the child both living and dead, whose destiny was to rule over the many who would not find their way to Valhalla. When Odin looked upon these children, he did not see innocence. He saw doom. The seas whispered to him of the roles they would play at the world's end. Fenrir, who would break his chains and swallow the All-Father. Jormungandr, who would rise from the sea to battle Thor, the venom in his breath poisoning the sky. Hel, who would send forth her legions of the dead to march against the living. To Odin, who spent his life seeking to know the future, these were not just children. They were pieces of a terrible puzzle that pointed to destruction. And so Odin acted. Perhaps he hoped to outwit fate, or at least delay it. He ordered each child taken away from their mother, Angrboda, tearing them from her arms. It was not mercy, but fear, that drove him. Each child was dealt with in a different way, as though Odin believed that scattering them might scatter their destiny as well. The serpent was hurled into the deepest sea, far from land. The wolf was kept close, at first, but bound with chains as his strength grew unbearable. And Hel, with her strange half-corpse body, was sent downward into the land of shadows, given dominion over the dead. It was both a punishment and a strange kind of crown. Exile and sovereignty at once. In this decision, we can feel the unease of the gods. They feared what these children might become, but they could not destroy them outright. Perhaps they lacked the power. Perhaps they feared angering Loki, who, despite his mischief, was still counted among their number. Or perhaps it was that deep instinct all people share, that to destroy something destined to shape the world is to only hasten its arrival. So instead, they cast the children away, binding them in different corners of the cosmos, but never erasing them. And in so doing, they planted the seeds of their own downfall. The story of Fenrir is especially haunting. He grew up among the gods, fed by their hands, playing alongside them. Only Tyr, the god of honor and oaths, treated him as a companion, showing him the loyalty others feared to give. But as Fenrir's size grew greater, the gods knew they could no longer allow him to roam free. They forged chains to bind him, but each time, Fenrir broke them with ease. Finally, the dwarfs crafted a ribbon, Gleipnir, smooth and soft as silk, yet stronger than iron. When they asked Fenrir to let them place it around him, he grew suspicious. He demanded that one of them place a hand in his mouth as a sign of good faith. Tyr, bound by honor, stepped forward. The ribbon held, and Fenrir thrashed in rage, realizing he had been tricked. In his fury, he bit down, severing Tyr's hand. From that day on, Fenrir was bound, howling, awaiting the day he would break free. Jormungandr's story is quieter, but no less ominous. Cast into the sea, he grew to unimaginable size, so large that he encircled the world. The waves themselves seemed to rise and fall with his breath. His battle with Thor was foretold, a clash that would shake the heavens. Yet until that day, he lay beneath the surface, unseen, like a threat waiting in silence. Hel, by contrast, was not bound or banished with cruelty. She was given her own realm, but only because the gods could not bear her presence in theirs. They looked at her half-dead face and recoiled, uneasy in the reminder of what awaited them all. Odin decreed that she would rule over those who did not fall in battle, those who slipped quietly into death by age or illness. She accepted this role, and in time, her realm grew vast. While her brothers were chained or hidden, she found her sovereignty in the very place all souls must one day touch. Together, the stories of these three children show us something profound about the Norse view of fate. No matter how Odin tried to control them, no matter how far he cast them away, the destinies remained. Fenrir would still break his bonds. Jormungandr would still rise from the sea. Hel would still send her dead to the fields of Ragnarok. In trying to fight fate, Odin only ensured that it unfolded exactly as foretold. Perhaps this is why the Norse held such a sober view of destiny, because even the mightiest gods could not escape it. Fate was not a chain to be broken, but a river to be followed. And in that river, Hel found her place. She was not bound like her brothers. She was not hurled into the sea. She was given dominion, quiet and unyielding. The gods might have thought they rid themselves of her presence, but in truth, they gave her a throne. From there, she watched the world above, patient, knowing that in time, all would come to her. Hel's realm was unlike any other place in Norse cosmology. Neither the bright halls of Asgard, where the gods feasted in endless revelry, nor the meadows of Vanaheim, where fertility and peace thrived. It was not even the battle-slain fields of Valhalla, where warriors clashed in joy each day and rose again by evening. No, Hel's domain was set apart, shrouded in shadows and quiet. It was a land of inevitability, a place where the unheroic dead, the vast majority of humanity, would drift when their time had come. To understand Hel's realm is to understand the Norse view of death. Unlike in many mythologies, where the afterlife is a place of either reward or punishment, the Norse afterlife was far less concerned with moral judgment. It was determined not by virtue, but by fate and circumstance. If one died in battle, with sword in hand, there was a chance of reaching Odin's hall, Valhalla, or Freyja's field, Folkvanga. But for the countless others, the farmers who aged slowly into death, the women who passed in childbirth, the children who fell ill, the merchants who drowned at sea, their path led elsewhere. Their souls descended to Hel. This realm lay beneath one of the great roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. Deep below the earth, farther than mortal eyes could ever see, there stretched a land both cold and still. It was not a place of torment as in Christian visions of hell, nor was it a paradise of shining meadows. Instead, it was a somber in-between, not cruel, but not warm either. The land itself was said to be cold and misty. The rivers that flowed there were dark, sluggish, carrying waters heavy with silence. The roofs of halls dripped with frost. The air was damp, and the ground felt like stone that had never known the sun. Even the food served in Hel's hall carried names of gloom. Her plate was called hunger, her knife was famine, her bed was sick bed, and the curtains around her couch were called blinding misfortune. These were not meant to torment, but to remind all who entered that death was not to be dressed in illusions of joy. It was stark. It was final. Hel's great hall was called El Juni, damp with sleet. Its walls were immense, gray as ash, with long tables stretching down the center. Here the dead gathered, not to feast in laughter, but to sit quietly, to remember the lives they had lived. There was no endless banqueting, no clamor of drinking horns. Instead, There was a strange stillness, a sense that time had slowed to something eternal. In Hel's Hall, one could not rush. One could only wait. And yet, to the Norse, this realm was not cruel. It was, in its own way, necessary. For every warrior who fell gloriously, there were 100 who simply slipped from life unnoticed. They too needed a place, and Hel's realm provided it. It was the great resting ground of the ordinary, the quiet gathering of all lives that did not burn brightly but instead faded gently. It was not joyous, but it was not devoid of care either. Hel herself was the sovereign here, and her presence colored the realm. She did not rule as a tyrant, nor as a benevolent queen. Instead, she embodied the very nature of death itself, impartial, unavoidable, neither merciful nor cruel. Her hall was not filled with screams, but with silence. She did not chase or hunt the living, but waited patiently, knowing that in time, all paths would lead downward to her. This is perhaps the most haunting aspect of her story. While her brothers were bound in chains or hidden beneath seas, struggling violently against their fates, Hel required no struggle. She needed no chains, no walls. Her power came from inevitability. No matter what victories the gods won above, no matter what battles mortals fought, all of them, gods and humans alike, would one day meet her gaze. The Norse saw this realm as a reflection of life itself. For the farmer who toiled daily with no chance of heroics, Hel was not a punishment, but a continuation. For the mother who lost her child, Hel's Hall was where that child would go, not to suffer, but to rest. In this sense, her kingdom was a vast, shadowy archive of humanity itself. Every unremarkable story, every forgotten life, found its place there. There were, however, whispers that not all who came to Hel's realm experienced it equally. Some told that those who had lived well found a gentler rest, while those who had been cruel or dishonorable felt the weight of their choices more keenly in her presence. But this was never described as torture. It was more a quiet, heavy awareness, the kind of self-judgment that cannot be escaped when one sits alone in silence. Hel's realm also played a role in the great cycle of destiny. At Ragnarok, when the end of the world would come, Hel would not remain passive. She would open her gates and send forth her army of the dead to march against the living. This was the other side of her sovereignty, patience turning into inevitability. For centuries, she watched the world above in silence. But when the time came, she would release the weight of countless souls in one great tide. To imagine Hel's realm, then, is to imagine a place not of fiery torment, but of cold truth. A mist-filled land beneath the roots of the world, where shadows linger and silence reigns. A place where the vast tapestry of human lives gathers when the bright halls of Asgard are closed to them. It is not a place of laughter or of screams, but of stillness, the great pause after life, the breath between existence and the final unraveling of the cosmos. And in the center of it all sits Hel herself, silent, watchful, half living and half dead, embodying the mystery of what it means to end. She does not chase. She does not plead. She only waits. And that is perhaps the most powerful image of all. Death not as a violent intrusion, but as the patient queen in her dark hall, waiting for every soul to find its way home. When the Norse spoke of Hel, they did not describe her in vague or distant terms. They gave her a face, a form, and a body that told her story before she even spoke. She was, after all, not merely a ruler but a symbol, the living embodiment of the balance between life and death. Her appearance reflected this truth, half belonging to the realm of the living and half already claimed by the silence of the grave. The stories tell us that Hel was split down the middle. One side of her body appeared as a living woman, flesh, color, and vitality. The other side was pale, cold, and corpse-like, as though death itself had taken hold of her skin. Some versions describe her half alive and half dead from top to bottom, while others say one side of her face was beautiful and the other ghastly. However the image was drawn, the meaning was always the same. Hel straddled two worlds. She was at once the reminder of life and its inevitable end. To imagine her is to picture her being unsettling and mesmerizing at the same time. On one side, Her cheek glows with warmth, her eyes bright, her hair thick and full. On the other, her flesh has withered, her lips are blue, and her skin carries the pallor of the grave. When she moved, one might see the grace of life in one step and the stiffness of death in the next. In this duality, Hel embodied a truth the Norse never looked away from, that life and death are never separate. They exist side by side, always present, each giving meaning to the other. Her clothing was often described in somber tones, suited to her role. Dark robes that flowed like shadows, heavy cloaks that seemed woven from the mist of Niflheim itself. Some say her garments were stitched from the shrouds of the dead, the wrappings that accompanied mortals into their graves. Others suggest she wore simple, undecorated cloth, unadorned because she needed no ornament. Her very body was already a symbol too powerful to ignore. Her presence was not meant to dazzle or frighten, but to remind. Wherever she stood, those who looked upon her saw the quiet truth of mortality made visible. Her face, half fair and half terrifying, spoke more than words could. In one eye, the spark of life remained, fierce and unyielding. In the other, the cold gaze of stillness. Some legends claim she could soften her expression for those who entered her realm with acceptance, offering them a rest that was gentle and inevitable. For others, especially those who clung desperately to life, her gaze could appear merciless, stripping away denial and leaving only the certainty that their journey had ended. In this way, Hel was both a comfort and a fay. To the mother who buried her child, there was a strange comfort in imagining that child welcomed into Hel's hall, overseen by a queen who knew both sides of existence. To the warrior who dreamed of endless glory, Hel was a figure of dread, a reminder that most lives, even theirs, would not be sung in halls but would sink quietly into her mists. Her dual face mirrored the human experience. Sometimes death comes softly, sometimes it comes harshly, but it always comes. The symbolism of Hel's body reached beyond her own story. In Norse thought, opposites were always bound together. Fire and ice, order and chaos, life and death. They believed the world itself began when fire met frost in the void of Ginnungagap. Hel's very being echoed this cosmic truth. She was not simply a character but a reflection of the universe's balance. Her half-living body was a reminder that even in the midst of life, death walks beside us. And in death, traces of life remain, the memories, the echoes, the legacy of what was. It is important to see her not as a monster, but as a symbol woven into the Norse imagination. Where later traditions might transform underworld rulers into demons, Hel was more complex. She was not punished for her form. She was defined by it. Odin himself cast her into the underworld not because she was evil, but because she was perfectly suited for it. Who better to guard the dead than one who bore both life and death in her very skin? Some storytellers suggest that Hel's appearance also carried compassion. Her living side could understand the pain of those who lost loved ones. Her dead side could understand the silence of those who had already crossed. She was a bridge, a threshold, a reminder that death was not the opposite of life but part of its circle. In her, grief found a face. In her, acceptance found a form. This duality made her both unsettling and strangely necessary. For the Norse, life was never guaranteed. Storms could claim ships in a single night. Winters could starve villages. Sickness could spread without warning. To live with such uncertainty required a way to face death without denial. Hel's appearance made that confrontation unavoidable. To imagine her was to acknowledge that beauty and decay, warmth and cold, were always intertwined. Even in the broader sweep of mythology, Hel's image lingers. Other cultures gave their death goddesses similar roles, but few made the symbols so striking. The Greeks had Hades, stern and shadowed, but still fully alive. The Egyptians had Anubis, jackal-headed and watchful. But the Norse gave their queen of death a body that was both alive and dead at once. This was no accident. It was a way of saying that death is not far away, not separate, not hidden in another world entirely. It is here, always, beside us, half of everything we know. So when you picture Hel, do not see her only as dreadful. See her as complete. See the warmth in one half of her smile and the stillness in the other. See how she carries in her form the truth of every human journey, that we are alive, but one day, inevitably, we will rest in her hall. And though her gaze may seem cold, it is not without understanding. She waits, silent and patient, because she knows that sooner or later, every road bends toward her. To truly understand Hel and her place in Norse imagination, it helps to place her realm beside the others where souls might journey after death. For though she ruled the majority of the dead, her hall was not the only destination. The Norse afterlife was varied, shaped not by moral judgment, but by fate, circumstance, and the way a person's life ended. Where one's final breath was taken often determined where the soul would wander next. In this way, Hel's quiet domain stood in striking contrast to the glory of Valhalla and the gentler meadow of Folkvanga. Valhalla, perhaps the most famous of all Norse afterlife realms, was Odin's great hall. It rose tall and bright within Asgard, with a roof said to be thatched in golden shields. Spears formed its rafters, and the benches of the hall stretched endlessly to seat the multitudes of warriors who found their way there. Only those chosen by Odin's Valkyries, the choosers of the slain, could enter, and their deaths had to come in battle. For the Norse, this was not only a place of honor, but also a continuation of the warrior's path. Each day in Valhalla, the Einherjar, the fallen warriors, would rise and fight. They clashed in furious battles, cutting one another down with swords and spears, only to rise again by evening, whole and unbroken. At night, they feasted. They drank mead poured by Valkyries, ate the ever-renewing meat of the boar Serimnu, and listened to songs of their victories. It was a hall of endless glory, a place where warriors prepared for the final battle of Ragnarok, when Odin would call upon them to stand at his side. Folkvanga, by contrast, was softer, though no less honorable. This was the meadow ruled by Freyja, the goddess of love, beauty, and war. Like Odin, she claimed half of those who died in battle. But her field was not about endless conflict and preparation for doom. It was instead a place of peace, of gathering, where warriors could rest in her care. Some traditions describe Folkvanga as a land of fertility and renewal, where the fallen lived among bright fields and gentle light, far from the noise of Valhalla. Together, Valhalla and Folkvanga represented honor, courage, and the fiery end of a warrior's path. They were reserved for the few, the chosen, those who met death in the clash of steel. The rest, those who died quietly, far from the battlefield, journeyed elsewhere. They journeyed downwards, toward Hel. This contrast was striking. While Valhalla roared with the sound of drinking horns, Hel's hall was hushed. While Folkvanga's meadows glowed with light, Hel's realm lay damp and misty beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. Valhalla and Folkvanga offered honor and peace to the warrior elite, but Hel received everyone else. The fisherman lost at sea, the shepherd who lived to old age, the mother whose hands were worn from weaving, the child who never grew to adulthood. In her hall, life's ordinariness found its resting place. For the Norse, this was not a matter of cruelty or unfairness. It was simply the nature of things. Not every life could end in the glory of battle. Not every man or woman was destined to hold a sword. Most would fade quietly, and Hel's hall gave them a home. In this way, her realm was far more inclusive, containing the vast majority of souls, while the shining halls above were reserved for a select few. This division reveals something profound about the Norse worldview. They did not see death as a singular experience, but as many paths, each shaped by fate. The warrior's death was celebrated, yes, but it was not the only way to die. Nor was it the only way to continue existing beyond the grave. Helheim was not a punishment. It was the balance, the necessary counterpart to Valhalla's glory and Folkvanga's peace. If we listen closely, we can also hear a subtle truth hidden within these contrasts. Valhalla's promise of endless fighting and feasting might sound glorious, but it is also exhausting, an eternal cycle of battle without end. Folkvanga offered more serenity, but it too was limited to a chosen half. Hel's realm, by comparison, was quieter, slower, perhaps even more honest. It did not dress death in illusions of glory. It did not offer distraction. Instead, it gave souls a place to sit in stillness, to rest in the shadows without expectation. For many, this may have been a true reflection of what death meant. Not triumph, not punishment, but inevitability and peace. The three realms of the dead also mirrored the gods who ruled them. Odin's Valhalla reflected his endless hunger for warriors and for preparation against fate. Freya's Folkvanger reflected her nurturing side, her ties to fertility and renewal, even as she too presided over war. Hel's realm reflected her dual nature, half life, half death, and the impartial stillness that comes when all striving is over. Each realm was a mirror of its ruler, and each ruler a reflection of the values they represented. To imagine these realms side by side is to feel the breadth of the Norse imagination. Picture first Valhalla, long halls, golden light, laughter, and clashing steel. Picture Folkvanger, wide meadows, green and blooming, filled with quiet gatherings and gentle renewal. Then picture Helheim, deep beneath the tree, halls of stone and mist, where silence is the companion of every soul. Each is different, yet each belongs to the same world, each woven into the roots and branches of Yggdrasil. For the Norse, this understanding gave life both urgency and acceptance. To die in battle was glorious, but rare. To die quietly was common, and not dishonorable. In this balance, life was precious, because all paths, whether glorious or humble, led eventually to the same truth, a journey beyond the living world, to halls shaped by gods and goddesses who embodied the mysteries of fate. And so, Hel's realm stands in contrast but also in harmony. It is neither bright like Valhalla nor fertile like Folkvanger. It is shadowed, quiet, impartial. Yet without it, the Norse vision of the afterlife would be incomplete. For most of humanity, it was not Odin's hall nor Freya's meadow that awaited, but Hel's cold embrace, a reminder that death comes not only for the mighty, but for all. One of the most haunting stories in Norse mythology is the death of Balder, the beloved son of Odin and Frigg. He was known for his beauty, his fairness, and a gentleness that seemed to shine even among the often harsh and turbulent gods. So perfect was Balder that he became a symbol of light and hope in a world often shadowed by frost and conflict. Even the other gods cherished him deeply, and his laughter was said to lighten the hearts of all who heard it. Yet, as is often true in Norse tales, even the brightest light cannot escape the shadows forever. It began with dreams. Balder, despite his beauty and strength, began to dream of his own death. These were not simple nightmares, but visions of falling, of blood, and of a silence that he could not escape. When he recounted them to Odin, the All-Father grew uneasy, for he had learned that dreams in the Norse world were often prophesied, messages that could not be ignored. Frigg, Balder's mother, resolved to protect her son. She traveled across the 9 realms, securing promises from everything that could harm him: fire, water, iron, wood, stones, and countless creatures. All agreed. All swore to never harm Balder. For a time, it seemed he was invulnerable. This sense of invulnerability gave the gods a strange kind of joy. They began to play games with Balder, throwing spears, arrows, and even stones at him, laughing as they bounced harmlessly off his body. It was a spectacle of trust and delight, a moment of lightness in a universe often defined by shadow. The gods marveled at the seeming perfection of their brother, the invincible son who could not be touched. But in the shadows of these games, Loki watched. The trickster god, ever clever, ever restless, was not content to see such perfection unchallenged. He noticed that Frigg had overlooked one small detail: the mistletoe. Frigg had never asked the mistletoe to swear not to harm Balder, thinking it too insignificant, too small to matter. Loki, ever cunning, seized on this oversight. He fashioned a dart or a spear, or in some tellings, a simple sprig of mistletoe, and with a smile that concealed far more than it revealed, he handed it to Hodda, Balder's blind brother. Hodda, unaware of what he held, followed Loki's instruction. He threw the mistletoe at Balder during one of the godly games. And in that instant, everything changed. The weapon struck Balder, piercing his heart, and for the first time in memory, the gods heard a cry that silenced their laughter. Balder fell, beautiful and radiant, now cold and still. The invincible sun, the light in the midst of frost, had died. The halls of Asgard were filled with mourning. Odin wept. Frigg wailed, her grief a sound that shook the air and the heavens alike. Even Loki, in his dark satisfaction, could not ignore the weight of what he had done. And as the gods contemplated how to respond, a silent truth became clear. Balder's fate was now intertwined with Hel's realm. For all who die eventually journey to her, and Balder was no exception. Though he had been a god, though he had been loved and revered, death made him equal to all others. Hel received him in her hall, Eljuni, her shadowed domain beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. According to some myths, she agreed to release Balder if the entire world wept for him, showing that grief could move even the queen of the dead. And so the gods and creatures of the worlds wept. Humans, gods, elves, and even the stones of the earth were said to shed tears. But Loki, ever scheming, refused to join in the mourning. One by one, beings from every corner of the universe wept for Balder, and yet Loki, disguised, stood silent. Because of Loki's deceit, the world could not fully persuade Hel to release Balder. He remained in her halls, a beautiful figure now cold and pale, yet uncorrupted. He did not rot, nor decay, for he was a god, but he did sit quietly, a figure of what was lost, a symbol of life's fragility even among immortals. Hel, patient and impartial, did not punish him, nor did she grant him freedom. She simply received him, as she had received countless others, quietly holding him in the stillness of her domain. Balder's death was a turning point, a quiet but profound moment in the Norse cosmos. It demonstrated that even the beloved, the invincible, and the radiant could not escape fate. Hel's role in the story, though often overlooked in retellings, was crucial. She was the inevitable endpoint, the one who would hold him safely until the events of Ragnarok brought him back into the world, or into the end-time struggle. She reminds us that death is not a punishment, not a horror, but an unavoidable stage of existence, a resting place that cannot be cheated. And so, in the quiet of a hall, Balder rests, a figure of light preserved in shadow, a god among the dead. Hel does not celebrate, nor does she mourn. She waits, as she always waits, for the threads of fate to weave together. For the Norse, her reception of Balder was neither cruel nor joyous. It was simply the way of the cosmos. Life leads to death, and even gods must pass beneath the cold gaze of a queen who is half living, half dead. Through this story, we see how Hel embodies inevitability. She is neither villain nor savior, but a necessary force in the grand tapestry of fate. And Balder, the bright and beloved, becomes a reminder that even light is temporary, and that all must one day face the quiet halls beneath Yggdrasil, where shadow and stillness reign. The grief over Balder's death spread like a quiet wind across the realms. From Asgard's golden halls to Midgard's rolling fields, sorrow took root in every heart. For the first time, the immortality of the gods seemed fragile, their laughter hollow, their strength uncertain. The bright sun of Odin lay in the shadowed halls of Hel, a stark reminder that even gods cannot escape death. And so the All-Father devised a plan, desperate to restore what had been lost, seeking to bring Balder back from the depths of Helheim. Odin, ever wise and patient, understood the rules of the universe. To retrieve Balder, one could not simply demand it. Hel herself, the queen of the Underworld, was bound by law and by her nature. She ruled with impartiality and inevitability, and nothing could compel her to release a soul without reason. So Odin sent his messengers, and even traveled himself in secret, seeking to learn what might persuade her. Hel, who had watched countless souls arrive, listened to these entreaties with a quiet patience. And then, a proposal was offered. The gods could convince her to return Balder if the entire cosmos mourned him, proving that his loss was felt by all. And so the gods sent out a call. Across the 9 worlds, they asked every creature, every element, to weep for Balder. Rivers, trees, mountains, animals, even stones were said to shed tears, their grief swelling like a tide toward the shadowed halls of Eljuni. It was a gesture of unity, of sorrow so vast that the Queen of the Dead might be moved to compassion. Every being, it seemed, mourned, gods and giants alike, mortals and spirits, acknowledging the life of a god who had touched them all. Yet Loki, cunning as ever, was not forgotten. He took on a disguise, blending in among the mourners, concealing his dark delight. In some versions of the tale, he appeared as a giantess, in others as a shadow among the trees, and in every telling, he refused to weep. Loki, who had orchestrated Balder's death with a simple sprig of mistletoe, now blocked the final step, ensuring that Hel would remain firm. The mourning of the cosmos was vast, almost complete, but the absence of one voice was enough. Hel, seeing that not all grief was genuine, could not release Balder. The failure of this attempt reverberated through Asgard. The gods were struck silent, not merely by sorrow but by the realization that even they were powerless against fate. The bright hope of resurrection had been snatched away, leaving only the quiet, unyielding certainty of Hel's halls. Balder remained beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, half-light and half-shadow, waiting for a future none could yet see. This event also revealed something profound about Hel herself. Unlike other figures in mythology who might be seen as cruel or vengeful, she was impartial. Her refusal to release Balder was not born of malice, but of principle. She ruled according to cosmic law, holding to the inevitability of death while acknowledging the grief of those who mourned. She did not gloat. She did not taunt. She merely waited, as she always waited, understanding that time would unfold as it must. The gods' attempt also highlighted the delicate balance between the living world and the realm of the dead. While Valhalla and Folkvanga were places of honor, reserved for those who met specific fates, Hel's domain encompassed the majority of beings. Her halls were vast, quiet, and unmoving, yet profoundly alive in their stillness. This was where the weight of mortality rested, a reminder that no victory or cleverness could change what was already set in motion. For mortals hearing these stories, there was a lesson both comforting and unsettling. Death cannot always be undone, nor can grief always be assuaged. Even gods, mighty and wise, must recognize limits. Yet within Hel's halls, there was also a strange form of care. Balder was not left to decay or rot. He rested, preserved in his divinity, waiting silently, safe within the impartial embrace of the Queen of the Dead. Her patience and constancy offered a different kind of solace, a reminder that death, though inevitable, was not chaos. It was order, quiet and unwavering. This episode also set the stage for future events, particularly Ragnarok, when the threads of fate would finally unravel. Balder's death, his journey to Hel, and the failure to retrieve him underscored the inevitability of what was to come. Hel would play her role, not as a villain, but as a gatekeeper, a custodian of the many lives that would one day march forth under her influence. She did not intervene out of cruelty. She maintained balance, awaiting the destined time when her authority would be called upon in the grandest of cosmic battles. In the quiet of Helheim, Balder's presence also brought a subtle light to the dark halls. Though he was dead, his divinity radiated faintly, mingling with the cold shadows that filled the realm. His being became a bridge, a connection between life above and death below, reminding those who visited or imagined a domain that even in stillness, there could be hope, memory, and beauty. The failed attempt to retrieve Balder also served as a cautionary tale about cleverness and deceit. Loki's interference, though small in the moment, a single refusal to weep, had consequences that rippled across all realms. It reminded the gods, and all who heard the tale, that fate could not be tricked or undone, even by those with immense power or cunning. Hel's judgment, impartial and unyielding, was a reflection of the greater order. Some things, no matter how beloved, must remain in the domain of the dead. And so, in the quiet aftermath, the cosmos returned to its rhythm. Life above continued, and the shadowed halls of Hel remained as they always had, vast, still, impartial. Balder rested, waiting, and Hel, half living, half dead, watched over all who entered her realm. The attempt to bring him back had failed, but it revealed truths about mortality, inevitability, and the patient constancy of the queen of the underworld. Loki, the trickster of Asgard, is one of the most complex figures in Norse mythology. Cunning, clever, and ever-shifting, he moves between worlds and allegiances with an ease that unsettles even the gods themselves. Yet it was Loki's cunning that directly led to Balder's death, and in doing so, he set in motion events that would ripple across all 9 realms. He was not a god of battle or honor, nor a god of warmth or wisdom. He was chaos, and chaos has consequences that even the mightiest cannot escape. Balder's death, orchestrated by Loki's cunning use of the mistletoe, became the first act in a chain of events that revealed the precarious balance of the Norse cosmos. The gods, usually so confident in their power, realized how fragile their control truly was. Loki's trick, seemingly small, demonstrated that fate could not be ignored, outwitted, or evaded. Even in Asgard, a realm of light and order, one act of mischief could bend destiny in ways the gods could scarcely predict. After Balder's death, Loki did not remain hidden in silence. He was known to move freely, often appearing in disguise among the worlds, mocking the gods or shaping events in ways both subtle and profound. In the context of Balder's story, his role is particularly chilling because he does not act from physical strength or open hostility. He acts with intelligence, observation, and the use of others, Hodder, in this case, to bring about results. His genius lies in understanding both people and fate, in nudging events toward outcomes that others might never imagine. The consequences of his actions were immediate and long-lasting. The gods were plunged into grief, mourning the loss of the fairest among them. Frigg, Balder's mother, wept uncontrollably, her sorrow echoing through Asgard, across the realms, even touching the stones and rivers of Midgard. Odin, wise as he was, felt the limits of his foresight. No amount of magical wisdom could undo what Loki had wrought. Even the attempt to retrieve Balder from Hel failed because of Loki's interference, underscoring that the trickster's influence could reach even the queen of the underworld. Loki's role also illuminates the nature of cause and effect in Norse mythology. Unlike in other mythologies where villains are punished immediately, Loki's actions create ripples that take time to unfold. Balder's death is tragic, but it is also a turning point, a signal that the world is fragile and fate inescapable. It is the first thread that begins to unravel toward Ragnarok, the final cataclysm when gods, giants, and humans alike will face the ultimate reckoning. Loki, in his subtle manipulations, becomes both instigator and guide, showing that even a single act can echo across the cosmos for centuries. The gods' response to Loki was complicated. They understood his cunning, and they feared his power, but they also relied on him in countless ways. He had aided them in impossible tasks, outwitted giants, and used his cleverness to rescue the realms from threats no one else could face. Yet with Balder's death, they saw the destructive potential of his mind. This duality made Loki both indispensable and dangerous. He was a reminder that even among immortals, no being is purely good or evil. Actions define consequences far more than labels ever can. Loki's interference also shaped Hel's domain in a subtle but lasting way. Because he prevented the universe from fully mourning Balder, Hel kept him in her hall, where he remained under her impartial watch. In doing so, she preserved him safely, but also in stasis, a figure of unfulfilled potential. Loki's trick ensured that Hel's authority was respected and highlighted the inevitability of death itself. No matter the cleverness of gods or the depth of grief, Hel's realm remained immutable, and the dead were not easily returned to the living world. In addition, Loki's role in Balder's death foreshadowed his later deeds during Ragnarok. The trickster who could manipulate events subtly would later lead the forces of chaos in the final battle. His cunning was not random. It was aligned with the inevitable unraveling of the cosmos. Balder's story shows that Loki's actions are never meaningless. They are a thread in the tapestry of fate, connecting moments of mischief to the ultimate fulfillment of prophecy. Interestingly, Loki's interference also teaches something about the Norse understanding of grief and inevitability. While the gods mourned, they could not alter what had been done. Loki's mischief is intertwined with a lesson that some events, once set in motion, cannot be undone. Even gods cannot reverse death. Even the most beloved cannot be spared. Hel, impartial and patient, became the custodian of this inevitability, her halls holding Balder safely, yet firmly, until the time foretold by fate. Finally, Loki's role underscores the duality of existence in Norse thought. He is both destroyer and catalyst, trickster and teacher, instigator of chaos and revealer of truth. Through him, we see that life is precarious, that mortality is inevitable, and that even the strongest cannot escape consequences. His presence reminds us that the universe is complex, that events are connected in ways both visible and hidden, and that fate cannot be cheated, only observed and understood. Thus, the death of Balder, the grief of the gods, and the patient watch of Hel all converge to show a profound truth. Loki's mischief, while tragic, was not random. It revealed the structure of the world, the limits of power, and the inevitability of destiny. His role is essential, for without him, the story of Balder would lose its depth, its melancholy, and its reminder that even in a world of gods, one small action can shift the course of all existence. The death of Balder sent a ripple of sorrow that extended far beyond the golden halls of Asgard. From the highest peaks of the gods' realm to the quiet valleys of Midgard, grief settled upon all who had known him or been touched by his presence. He was not merely a god, he was a symbol of light, of hope, and of gentle beauty in a world that often leaned toward frost and shadow. His passing reminded every being, mortal and divine alike, of the fragility of life and the inevitability of death, even for the beloved and the mighty. Odin, wise and patient, realized that words alone would not bring Balder back. Magic, strategy, and even negotiation had failed to alter the course of fate. Yet, he was determined to try, seeking a solution that could bypass the harsh finality of death. It was Frigg, Balder's mother, who proposed a grand idea. If the entire universe, every creature, every tree, every river, every stone, mourned for Balder, perhaps Hel, the queen of the Underworld, might be moved to release him. This plan relied not on force or trickery, but on the demonstration of universal grief, a testament to Balder's significance and the love he had inspired. And so the call went out. Across all 9 realms, every being was asked to weep for Balder. From the frostbitten lands of Niflheim to the sunlit fields of Vanaheim, beings of every kind responded. The rivers wept, flowing heavier and darker as though their waters carried the weight of sorrow. Trees released sap-like tears, and even the stones, thought immovable and unfeeling, seemed to tremble under the grief of the cosmos. Gods, giants, elves, and mortals all added their voices to this chorus of lamentation, hoping that their collective sorrow might pierce the cold heart of Hel herself. For a time, it seemed that their efforts would succeed. Balder's absence had been keenly felt, and the weeping of so many worlds was a tangible reflection of the love and reverence held for him. Some imagined that even Hel's own halls, vast and shadowed beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, seemed to tremble under the weight of this sorrow. Yet, Loki, ever cunning and ever present in mischief, had one final act to ensure that the attempt would fail. Disguised, he slipped unnoticed among the mourners. In some stories, he appeared as a giantess. In others, a shadow blending with the trees. In every version, he refused to weep, his silence blocking the final step required to move Hel's judgment. Loki's refusal was small in appearance, but vast in consequence. The cosmos mourned, the rivers flowed heavy, and every living creature contributed to the sorrow. Yet it was not complete. Hel, who ruled with impartiality and adherence to cosmic law, saw this imperfection. Though moved by nearly universal grief, she could not release Balder. Her domain, her halls of quiet and shadow, were bound by the rules of inevitability. Death, she understood, was not to be undone lightly, and the failure of one voice to join the mourning ensured that the natural order remained intact. This failure was a lesson to the gods, perhaps the first they truly felt with such weight. Even their combined might, even their wisdom and planning, could not alter fate. Balder remained in Hel's realm, a figure of light preserved in shadow, waiting silently in Iljuni. There he rested, neither tormented nor decayed, a reminder of the limits of even divine power. The attempt to retrieve him had revealed the precision of Hel's impartiality, the patience of the queen of the underworld, and the inevitability of mortality, which even gods could not avoid. For mortals listening to these tales, there was a quiet, sobering truth embedded in this failure. Grief can be vast, sincere, and universal, yet it cannot always change the course of events. Death, once it has come, cannot be undone simply by desire or sorrow. This is not cruelty, but order. In Hel's halls, Balder was safe, his divinity preserving him, yet he was still part of the great, immutable flow of life into death. The quiet of Iljuni became a mirror for the living, acceptance, patience, and understanding that some things, no matter how precious, cannot be recovered. The mourning also had an effect on the living world. The sorrow of the gods weighed heavily on the cosmos. Even in the golden halls of Asgard, feasts were quieter, laughter more subdued. Every action carried the shadow of Balder's absence. In Midgard, humans and creatures seemed to pause, their lives marked by the loss of a being whose influence reached beyond his immediate presence. The attempt to bring him back, though unsuccessful, reminded all that life is fleeting, and that even gods are bound by the inevitability of mortality. And yet, there was a certain beauty in the effort. The collective mourning reflected unity across the worlds, a recognition of Balder's importance, and the depth of emotion that even immortals could feel. The attempt was noble, even if it failed. It showed that grief, when shared, could be powerful, resonating through rivers, mountains, forests, and skies. Though it did not alter Hel's decision, it became a testament to the interconnectedness of all life and to the quiet strength of sorrow when it is sincere and universal. In the aftermath, the gods returned to their realms, each carrying the weight of their grief. They could not bring Balder back, but they had demonstrated the depth of their devotion and the reach of their mourning. And in Hel's halls, Balder remained, resting quietly, a figure of hope in shadow, waiting for the time foretold by fate. The failed resurrection attempt thus became a story not of loss alone, but of connection, inevitability, and the patient, impartial rule of the Queen of the Dead. In this way, the mourning of the cosmos and the failed resurrection underscore the dual nature of Hel herself. She is neither cruel nor merciful. She is constant, inevitable, and patient. Through her, the Norse understood that death is part of the natural order, and that even universal grief cannot undo what must come to pass. Balder's resting place in Iljuni serves as a reminder that while life is precious and sorrow profound, the flow from life into death is unbroken, awaiting all, mortal and immortal alike.
Long before Balder's death, the gods of Asgard spoke in whispers of a time yet to come, a day when the cosmos itself would tremble and the threads of destiny would unravel. This day was called Ragnarok, the end of all things, a final cataclysm where gods, giants, and mortals would face the ultimate reckoning. It was a prophecy both feared and respected, for the Norse understood that fate is inescapable, and that no amount of valor, cunning, or magic could alter what had been foretold. In this final battle, Hel and her realm would play a role both subtle and immense, a reminder of the inevitability of death and the impartiality of cosmic order. Ragnarok was not merely a battle. It was a cosmic reset, a confrontation of forces that had always existed in tension. Fire and ice, chaos and order, life and death, each would collide, reshaping the world. The gods of Asgard, for all their power, would face destruction. Giants would rise in fury. The seas would surge, the skies would darken, and the earth itself would shudder. And amidst this tumult, Hel would open the gates of her vast halls, releasing legions of the dead to join the tide of destiny. These were not mindless spirits, but the souls that had accumulated in Eljuni across countless ages, waiting patiently, silently, for the day when they would be called forth. Balder, still resting in Hel's halls, became one of the many figures connected to this prophecy. Though he had not yet been resurrected, his death and presence in her realm were intertwined with the unfolding of Ragnarok. Hel, who had received him and countless others, would release them not out of malice but in obedience to the cosmic order. The dead of her kingdom were part of the larger plan, a reminder that no one, mortal or immortal, could escape their role in the unfolding of fate. She was the keeper, the custodian, ensuring that every soul waited until the time was right. The role of Hel in Ragnarok is both subtle and profound. Unlike Odin or Thor, who would face their fated opponents in direct combat, Hel's influence is quiet yet absolute. From the depths of her shadowed halls, she commands the dead, ensuring that they rise when destiny calls. She does not act impulsively, nor does she intervene to favor one side over another. Her presence is a constant, impartial, inevitable, and inescapable. When the final battle begins, it will not matter how clever the gods are, how valiant the warriors fight, or how cunning the trickster schemes. Hel's armies, drawn from the countless souls she has held, will march forth as a tide of inevitability, shaping the outcome of the cosmos in ways that cannot be resisted. Her role also underscores the Norse understanding of balance. While the living struggle and fight, the dead wait. Life and death exist in parallel, intertwined, yet separate. The living are bound by the struggles of mortality, while the dead, under Hel's watch, are bound by the impartiality of fate. When Ragnarok comes, these forces converge, reminding all that death is not an afterthought but a central part of existence. Hel's patient governance of her realm becomes essential in this moment, as her armies of the dead will tip the scales of the final cosmic confrontation. Even in myth, Hel is depicted with a certain inevitability during Ragnarok. She does not cheer, nor does she direct chaos for her own gain. She acts as the universe dictates. The dead she holds will rise because the threads of destiny have been woven that way. Every soul she governs is a piece of the great tapestry, moving according to the rhythm of fate. In this sense, Hel embodies a principle more than a character, the truth that death cannot be outrun, deferred, or ignored. It is patient, impartial, and certain, and it shapes the world above even as it remains beneath. The Norse also imagined the psychological weight of this prophecy. For gods who had laughed in halls of gold, feasted in abundance, and wielded magic and might, the knowledge of their inevitable fall was sobering. Ragnarok was a reminder that no power, no matter how divine, could resist the passage of time and the inevitability of fate. Hel, silent and unmoving in her cold halls, represented this truth with clarity. The dead waited for their summons, not out of vengeance but out of duty to the cosmic order. Hel's impartiality is central to the story of Ragnarok. While the living and the heroic dead fight for survival or glory, she governs the natural flow of souls with neither cruelty nor favoritism. She embodies the calm, unchangeable law of mortality. Her shadowed halls, deep beneath Yggdrasil, become the staging ground for the eventual convergence of all things. In this way, Hel connects the ordinary with the extraordinary, the mortal with the immortal, the stillness of death with the chaos of the final battle. The prophecy of Ragnarok, and Hel's role in it, also emphasizes the cyclical nature of Norse cosmology. Death is not an end but part of a larger rhythm. Hel's release of the dead at Ragnarok is not arbitrary. It is part of the balance of existence, ensuring that the universe moves according to its destined path. Life, death, and destruction are intertwined, each giving meaning to the other. Hel's patient presence allows the living to act, to fight, to strive, knowing that the final outcome is already written in the fabric of the cosmos. Even in the calm of bedtime storytelling, this aspect of Hel is deeply resonant. She is not a figure to fear in the same way as fire or lightning. She is a constant, a quiet observer of the flow of existence, whose role is necessary, inevitable, and eternal. When the final battle comes, she will fulfill her role, releasing those who have waited for centuries, and in doing so, she ensures the completion of fate. Thus, the prophecy of Ragnarok and Hel's role within it offer a profound lesson about the nature of life and death, about inevitability and balance. While gods and mortals struggle above, the dead wait below, guided by a queen who is both half-living and half-dead, who embodies the impartial rhythm of existence. When the time comes, she will act, not for vengeance, not for chaos, but for the order that governs all things. In her shadowed halls, Eljuni, the threads of destiny are preserved until the moment they are called forth, revealing the quiet power of inevitability that Hel represents. As the prophecy of Ragnarok drew closer, the image of Hel's realm became ever more vital in the imagination of the Norse. Eljuni, her hall of shadows, was not simply a quiet resting place for the dead. It was also the staging ground for an army unlike any other. While Valhalla's warriors trained endlessly for glory and Folkvanger's chosen rested in gentle fields, Hel's dead waited silently, patiently, their numbers vast and impartial. They were not chosen by valor or heroism, but by the simple fact of mortality. In their stillness lay immense potential, a power that would awaken when the threads of destiny demanded it. Hel herself did not command with anger or excitement. She did not shout orders or inspire courage. Her leadership was subtle, rooted in the unyielding certainty that death brings. The souls within her halls knew their place in the cosmic order. They had arrived at different times and for different reasons. Some had died in battle, others of illness, famine, or old age, but all were now equal beneath her shadowed roof. Eljuni, with its cold stones, misted air, and quiet halls, became a crucible where mortality was preserved, where the dead rested, waiting for the moment they would be called forth. When Ragnarok finally arrived, these souls would rise, not in chaos or confusion, but in an unstoppable, unified force. There were the dead of every kind: kings, farmers, warriors, children, and artisans. The full breadth of life and death was represented within Hel's army. Unlike the gleaming ranks of Valhalla or the calm forces of Folkvanger, her army was vast, inexhaustible, and impartial. Their march would not favor one side. It would simply follow the inevitability of fate. Their purpose was not conquest for glory, nor was it vengeance for past wrongs. They would move because destiny demanded it. The influence of Hel over her army is one of quiet, steady power. She does not wield it like a sword or thunderbolt. Her control comes from her role as the custodian of death itself. She preserves, observes, and releases, ensuring that every soul fulfills its part in the unfolding of Ragnarok. Unlike other gods who act in visible, dramatic ways, Hel's power is subtle but absolute. The dead rise because she permits it, and their obedience reflects her impartial authority. In this, she is perhaps the most patient of all figures in Norse mythology. Hel's army, when finally released, becomes a force of inevitability. Their presence underscores a profound lesson about mortality. Death does not act with favoritism or malice. It is impartial, and those who have passed into her care follow its rhythms faithfully. When they emerge during Ragnarok, the living see the quiet, unyielding order that governs all existence. The dead of Hel are not chaotic spirits, nor are they evil. They are the natural consequence of life itself, moving according to the laws of fate, just as the living are bound by their struggles and decisions. It is also striking to consider the composition of Hel's army. It is not made up of heroes alone, nor of warriors who died with swords in their hands. It includes the ordinary, the overlooked, the quietly brave, and even the meek. In this, the Norse vision of death is uniquely inclusive. Every soul counts. Every life contributes to the totality of existence, and in the final reckoning, all are equal. Hel's impartiality reinforces the idea that mortality is universal. No one, mortal or immortal, can escape its pull. The dead, rising from Eljuni, move with the inevitability of fate. Their march is not hurried, nor is it chaotic. It is steady, measured, and relentless, a silent reminder of the power that death carries. Hel herself is both part of them and apart from them. She guides them not with emotion, but with a calm authority that ensures the universe's balance remains intact. The halls of the underworld are quiet before Ragnarok, yet the tension is palpable, for the dead wait, aware that their moment of purpose is approaching. Even the gods recognize the importance of Hel's army. While they prepare in Valhalla and Folkvanga, training for battle and awaiting their fates, they also understand that the tide of the dead cannot be ignored. Hel does not intervene lightly, nor does she act out of spite. She releases the dead because the moment has arrived, because the prophecy demands it. In this way, her influence is profound. She shapes the battlefield not through sword or magic, but through the natural law of mortality. The army of the dead also symbolizes the connection between life and death in Norse cosmology. Just as the living struggle above, the dead are waiting below. Their rising reminds all that life and death are intertwined, that every action has consequence, and that the world is governed by forces larger than individual desire or power. Hel, patient and impartial, represents this principle with clarity. Her halls preserve the balance until the universe calls upon her to act. When the dead emerge from Eljuni, the world witnesses a force that is neither good nor evil, but inevitable. They march because it is their time, their place in the grand design. Their presence will shape Ragnarok, influencing the outcome of battles, the fates of gods, and the destiny of the cosmos itself. And yet, even as they rise, Hel remains calm, patient, and constant. She does not need to act dramatically. Her power lies in her constancy, her impartiality, and her role as custodian of all who have passed. In the quiet moments, when the battles of Ragnarok are imagined in one's mind, the presence of Hel's army offers both awe and reflection. They are a reminder that death is not a punishment, nor a distant abstraction. It is an active, inevitable force that shapes the world and the lives of all who inhabit it. Hel herself embodies this truth, watching over her domain with patience, ensuring that the dead fulfill their roles, and that the cycle of life and death remains unbroken. Thus, Hel's army and her influence in Ragnarok are a testament to the power of inevitability. They reveal the subtle, unyielding authority of death, the impartiality of fate, and the interconnectedness of life and mortality. Through her, the Norse understood that even in the chaos of the final battle, there is order, balance, and purpose. Hel's calm presence, her patient release of the dead, and the unstoppable march of Eljuni's inhabitants remind all that mortality is both inevitable and essential, a quiet force that underpins the very structure of the cosmos. Hel is one of the most fascinating figures in Norse mythology, not only because of her role as the ruler of the underworld, but also because of what she represents in the human imagination. Unlike other deities whose power is expressed through war, wisdom, or creation, Hel embodies inevitability, impartiality, and the quiet constancy of death itself. Her half-living, half-dead form, often depicted with a body divided between flesh and shadow, is a visual representation of the liminal space she occupies, the threshold between life and the afterlife, between light and darkness, between the known and the unknowable. This symbolism is profound, and it resonates across many aspects of Norse culture, myth, and art. In her essence, Hel represents the impartial nature of mortality. She is neither cruel nor malevolent, nor is she nurturing or comforting in the conventional sense. Instead, she is a constant, impartial presence, reminding all beings, mortal or divine, that death is a natural part of existence. In a world where gods can manipulate storms, lightning, and seas, where heroes carve their names into history with sword and valor, Hel is the reminder that no power, no strength, and no cleverness can evade death. Her impartiality is her power, and in it lies a profound lesson. Life is precious precisely because it is temporary, and death is meaningful because it is inevitable. The imagery of Hel has inspired countless storytellers, poets, and artists throughout history. In the ancient sagas, she is often depicted as a figure who is both eerie and compelling, half in shadow, half in light, sitting silently in her cold, misted halls. This visual duality captures the human fascination with the unknown, the blending of fear and curiosity that death inspires. Her portrayal in art, from carvings on rune stones to illustrations in medieval manuscripts, often emphasizes this balance between the living and the dead, reflecting a worldview where death is not to be feared blindly but understood as a natural, inescapable part of the cosmos. Culturally, Hel influenced the way the Norse approached death and the afterlife. Unlike other societies where the afterlife was strictly a place of reward or punishment, Hel's realm was more nuanced. It was neither paradise nor hell in the moralistic sense. Eljuni, Hel, received all who died outside of Valhalla or Folkvanga. The dead were preserved in a state of quiet stillness, neither tormented nor rewarded, waiting for their moment in the great cosmic cycle. This neutrality reflected a broader cultural understanding. Death is universal, impartial, and necessary. The living were reminded to value life, honor the dead, and understand that mortality is an inherent part of existence. Hel's role also extends into moral and psychological symbolism. In many ways, she embodies the inevitability of consequence. Just as the living are bound by the results of their actions, the dead are bound by the structure of the universe. She does not punish, but she enforces the natural order. In this, she serves as a symbolic reminder that every choice, every action, and every life has an outcome, whether in the form of memory, legacy, or the final journey into her halls. Hel becomes a teacher, showing through her impartiality that order and inevitability exist beyond mortal comprehension, and that acceptance of these truths brings a quiet form of wisdom. Even in storytelling, Hel's presence provides a balance to tales of gods, heroes, and monsters. While Odin schemes, Thor battles, and Loki manipulates, Hel waits in quiet authority, reminding audiences that no amount of drama, heroism, or cunning can override mortality. This balance is particularly effective in the bedtime-style storytelling approach, where calm reflection and immersive imagery help the listener understand profound truths without the need for fear or alarm. Hel's symbolism is not just about death. It is about acceptance, patience, and understanding the natural rhythms of life and the universe. In addition, Hel has influenced modern perceptions of the underworld and death in Scandinavian literature and folklore. Even today, writers, artists, and filmmakers draw upon her image and attributes when exploring themes of mortality, fate, and inevitability. She serves as a bridge between ancient myth and contemporary reflection, reminding us that the human fascination with death, the afterlife, and the unknown is timeless. Her calm authority and impartial nature provide a counterpoint to more dramatic or fearsome depictions of death, emphasizing that the end of life is part of a larger, balanced order rather than chaos or punishment. Moreover, Hel's duality, half living, half dead, serves as a metaphor for the liminal spaces in human experience. She embodies transition, thresholds, and the spaces between certainty and mystery. In the Norse worldview, life and death, light and shadow, joy and sorrow all interconnected. Hel, by her very form and presence, reminds mortals and gods alike that existence is a balance of opposites, and that understanding this balance allows for a deeper appreciation of life, even in the face of inevitable endings. Her story also carries lessons about patience and inevitability. Just as she waits for the appointed time to release Balder or the dead in Ragnarok, so too does she embody the notion that events unfold according to cosmic law, not personal desire. This patience and impartiality offer a calming, reflective perspective for listeners, suggesting that while life is full of challenges, uncertainty, and loss, there is also order and rhythm underlying the apparent chaos. Finally, Hel's cultural and symbolic influence extends beyond Norse mythology into the ways humans think about death, grief, and the afterlife. She is not a figure to be feared in terror, nor merely a character in fantastical stories. She is a reminder that mortality is universal, that life's beauty is amplified by its impermanence, and that the natural order, though sometimes harsh, is also deeply structured and meaningful. In this way, Hel becomes not only a mythological figure but a source of meditation, reflection, and gentle understanding, perfectly suited to the calm, immersive storytelling traditions that soothe, inform, and inspire. Hel's presence in Norse mythology is unique, but she is not alone in representing the mysteries of death and the afterlife. Across the 9 realms, the Norse imagined various underworld figures, spirits, and deities who shaped the journeys of the dead, each with their own domain, temperament, and lessons for the living. By examining Hel alongside these other figures, we can better understand the complexity and richness of the Norse worldview regarding mortality, fate, and the quiet authority of death. One figure often compared to Hel is Modgud, the guardian of the bridge over the river Gijol, which separates the realm of the living from the land of the dead. Modgud is described as a female spirit who questions those who cross her bridge, determining whether they are worthy or prepared for their journey. Though less central than Hel, she represents the threshold, the liminal space between life and death. Her presence emphasizes that the passage to the underworld is not arbitrary but guided, structured, and observed. Hel's domain, by contrast, is vast and impartial, receiving all who die outside the heroic halls, yet her authority is complemented by figures like Modgud who manage the movement between worlds. Another figure often mentioned is Garm, the monstrous hound who guards Hel's gate. Garm, sometimes associated with the apocalyptic events of Ragnarok, serves as both sentinel and symbol. His vigilance ensures that the dead do not leave prematurely and that the boundaries between life and death remain intact. Hel, while impartial and patient, relies on the natural and supernatural order of a realm to maintain balance. Garm reinforces this order with a palpable sense of caution and inevitability, reminding all who encounter him that the passage into Helheim is final, though not cruel. Norns, though not underworld figures in the strictest sense, also interact with the realm of death in subtle ways. These 3 goddesses of fate, Yor, Verandi, and Skuld, measure, record, and weave the destinies of gods and mortals alike. Their presence underlines the interconnection between life and death. Hel may rule the dead, but the Norns determine when a soul arrives in her halls. Together, these figures create a layered vision of the Norse afterlife, one in which fate, guardianship, and impartiality intersect, ensuring that every life follows its appointed path. Hel is also contrasted with the warriors of Valhalla and Folkvanga. While the Einherjar, the honored dead of Valhalla, train for the glory of battle, and the souls in Freyr's Folkvanga enjoy peaceful fields and gentle pleasures, Hel's dead are neither honored for heroism nor granted comfort. They exist in quiet stillness, impartial witnesses to the unfolding of cosmic law. By comparing her to these other realms, the Norse emphasized that death was not a single, monolithic experience. There were distinctions, hierarchies, and purposes. Hel's impartiality highlights that mortality is universal, while the special domains of Valhalla and Folkvanga celebrate the exceptional. Other spirits, often called Draugr in Old Norse sagas, also interact with Hel's domain. Draugr are restless, sometimes vengeful spirits who linger in the world of the living, driven by unresolved desires or unfinished business. While Hel's domain is orderly and patient, the Draugr represent what happens when the natural flow of life into death is interrupted. In this contrast, we see the importance of Hel's authority. She is not merely a guardian of the dead. She is a custodian who ensures the natural order, preventing the dead from lingering aimlessly or disturbing the living, a function the Draugr disrupt when balance is upset. Hel also intersects symbolically with figures from other mythologies. While she is uniquely Norse, scholars have drawn parallels to the Greek Hades or the Egyptian Osiris, though her impartiality is distinctive. Where Hades rules with a sense of division, separating the blessed from the damned, and Osiris judges the soul's worth, Hel receives all without evaluation. This universal impartiality reinforces the Norse understanding of death as an inevitability rather than a reward or punishment. She is a force of nature as much as a deity, shaping perception, morality, and reflection in subtle, enduring ways. The interactions between Hel and these figures deepen our understanding of the Norse afterlife. Modgud's questions, Garm's vigilance, the Norns' weaving of fate, and the restless Draugr all highlight aspects of mortality, consequence, and inevitability. Yet Hel remains the central anchor, the impartial force around which all other elements revolve. Her calm authority ensures that life and death remain in balance, that the rules of existence are upheld, and that every soul, regardless of status or deeds, finds its appointed place in the cosmic order. Even in the context of storytelling, these relationships are significant. They remind listeners that death is complex, multifaceted, and governed by laws beyond human understanding. Hel's interactions with other underworld figures show that while mortality is inevitable, it is also structured, observed, and integrated into the rhythms of the universe. In bedtime storytelling, this perspective offers comfort. Death is not chaotic or arbitrary. It has order, purpose, and inevitability, and those who have passed are cared for by an impartial, constant authority. Finally, Hel's relationship with other underworld figures underscores the depth of Norse cosmology. She is not isolated but part of a network of guardians, sentinels, and forces that together maintain the balance between life and death. This network reflects the Norse view that existence is interconnected, with each being mortal, immortal, or spirit playing a role in the grand design. Hel's impartiality, her patience, and her quiet authority become central themes in this vision, teaching that death is natural, necessary, and part of a cosmic rhythm that even the gods cannot escape. Through these interactions, Hel is not only a figure of mortality but also a symbol of balance, patience, and inevitability. Her relationships with other underworld beings highlight the richness of Norse mythology, offering insights into the culture's understanding of life, death, fate, and cosmic order. She embodies a calm, impartial authority, guiding the dead and maintaining the rhythm of existence, while other figures, Modgud, Garm, the Norns, and even the Draugr, highlight the challenges, thresholds, and consequences that make her role essential and profound. As centuries passed, the figure of Hel evolved in the minds and stories of the Norse and the cultures influenced by them. In the earliest mythological accounts, Hel was depicted as the impartial queen of the underworld, presiding over Eljuni with quiet authority and inevitability. She was a custodian of the dead, neither cruel nor nurturing, embodying the inevitability of mortality and the impartiality of fate. Yet as the sagas were written, retold, and adapted through generations, her image shifted subtly, shaped by literary techniques, cultural integration, and the changing needs of storytellers. In the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda, Hel maintains her fundamental characteristics. She is half living, half dead. Her whole is shadowed, cold, and vast, and she governs all who die outside the honored realms of Valhalla and Folkvanga. However, later literary depictions often emphasized her more eerie, mysterious qualities. Writers amplified her physical duality, describing her face and body as split between flesh and darkness, half beautiful, half decayed. This transformation was not intended to make her frightening in the way of a villain. Rather, it emphasized her position between worlds, her liminality, and the profound balance she represented. The imagery made her memorable, unforgettable, and deeply symbolic of the boundary between life and death. Over time, Hel also became more of a narrative device in the sagas and later Norse storytelling. Authors used her presence to heighten tension, to illustrate the consequences of mortality, and to explore the inevitability of fate. Stories of Balder, for example, portray her as patient and impartial, yet her role becomes more dramatic in the retellings, highlighting the impossibility of reversing death and the subtle power of the underworld. By framing her as both inevitable and somewhat mysterious, later writers created a figure who could evoke awe and reflection without invoking terror. Hel became a quiet moral compass for the sagas, representing the ultimate boundary that no one, not even gods, could cross. In addition to her literary evolution, Hel's characterization was influenced by the cultural and religious changes in Scandinavia. As Christianity spread through the region, Norse mythology interacted with new ideas of the afterlife, judgment, and heaven and hell. Hel, with her impartial, non-judgmental domain, sometimes absorbed elements reminiscent of these concepts. Some later storytellers emphasized her coldness or distance from the living, drawing subtle parallels to the Christian notion of separation between the earthly and the divine. Yet unlike a Christian hell, she remained impartial. She did not punish the wicked or reward the virtuous. Her role was always to maintain cosmic balance, and this distinction preserved her unique identity even amid cultural blending. Interestingly, in some sagas and later poetry, Hel's personality is given more texture. While early sources present her as steady and impartial, later accounts sometimes hint at her awareness, even curiosity, about the living world. She observes the actions of gods and mortals alike, understanding the impact of their deeds on fate. In this sense, she becomes more than a static figure. She is a conscious participant in the unfolding cosmos. Yet, despite these literary embellishments, her essential nature, impartiality, inevitability, patience, remains intact. The evolution does not undermine her character. It enriches it, giving readers and listeners a more vivid, relatable, and memorable guide to the underworld. The transformation of Hel in literature also reflects a broader storytelling trend in Norse culture. Over time, storytellers sought to make the underworld more vivid, more narratively compelling, and more emotionally resonant. Hel's Hall, El-Juni, is described in greater detail, with frost-covered floors, misted corridors, and shadows that seem almost alive. The dead themselves are depicted more vividly, their silence, stillness, and waiting becoming part of the atmosphere that underscores Hel's authority. These embellishments do not alter her role but heighten the immersive experience for audiences, drawing them into the quiet, inevitable rhythm of life and death. Moreover, Hel's evolution in literature highlights her symbolic richness. She is not simply a character. She represents complex themes: mortality, inevitability, impartiality, and the threshold between worlds. Later writers used her to explore human fears and reflections, turning her presence into a meditative experience. Listeners or readers of these sagas are encouraged to consider their mortality, the impact of their choices, and the ultimate impartiality of the cosmos. Hel's transformation thus serves both narrative and philosophical purposes, making her a central figure in the moral and reflective dimensions of Norse literature. Even in the most imaginative retellings, Hel's evolution maintains her calm, reflective authority. She is sometimes depicted in conversation with the living, sometimes observing from afar, and occasionally acting subtly to enforce cosmic balance. Yet she never becomes capricious or malevolent. She is a steady reminder that life is temporary, that death is inevitable, and that even the most clever or powerful cannot escape the natural order. In this sense, her literary transformation deepens her significance, emphasizing the lessons she embodies while enhancing her presence in stories. Finally, Hel's literary evolution also reflects the human fascination with boundaries and thresholds. By emphasizing her liminality, half-living, half-dead, observer, and custodian, later writers explored themes of transition, reflection, and inevitability. Hel becomes a guide for contemplating mortality, a symbol of patience and cosmic order, and a figure whose calm authority resonates with audiences across generations. Whether in the earliest mythic texts or in later sagas, she remains a compelling figure, embodying both the fear and serenity inherent in understanding life's impermanence. Through these literary transformations, Hel emerges as both a mythological and cultural symbol. She teaches that death is impartial, inevitable, and deeply integrated into the rhythm of existence. Her evolving portrayal adds depth, texture, and emotional resonance while preserving the essential truth she represents. She is neither villain nor punisher, but a figure of quiet, patient authority whose presence in literature continues to inspire reflection, awe, and contemplation. The figure of Hel, once confined to the ancient sagas and oral traditions of the Norse, has gradually found her way into modern media and popular culture, illustrating the timeless fascination with death, fate, and the mysterious realms beyond life. Today, She appears in novels, video games, comics, and television, each adaptation reflecting contemporary interpretations of her mythic significance while preserving the essence of her original character: impartiality, inevitability, and quiet authority. These modern portrayals allow audiences to engage with Hel in ways that are imaginative, immersive, and deeply reflective, keeping the ancient lessons alive while expanding her cultural relevance. In literature, Hel often appears in retellings of Norse mythology aimed at younger audiences or in contemporary fantasy series inspired by the myths. Writers highlight her duality, half-living, half-dead, and her role as a guide to the underworld. She is frequently depicted as a calm, watchful presence who governs the dead with patience and impartiality, reflecting the original saga's emphasis on her role as a custodian rather than a villain. These stories allow readers to explore themes of mortality and inevitability, often framing Hel as a figure of reflection, someone whose quiet authority encourages characters and audiences alike to consider the nature of life, death, and the boundaries between them. Video games have embraced Hel's visual and narrative potential in particularly striking ways. In several popular titles inspired by Norse myth, she is portrayed with dramatic imagery, half of her body shadowed or decayed, the other half human and lifelike, seated or standing in a vast, mist-covered hall. Players encounter her as a powerful and neutral force, guiding or challenging them in ways that reflect her mythological role. While these portrayals sometimes dramatize her presence for gameplay or narrative tension, they often retain the core elements of her character: her impartiality, her command over the dead, and her role as a gatekeeper to the underworld. Through interactive media, audiences experience Hel not just as a story but as a presence that shapes the unfolding events of the game world, echoing the patience and inevitability that define her in mythology. Comics and graphic novels provide another avenue for Hel's modern adaptation. Artists are drawn to her striking duality, her half-living, half-dead form, and the eerie, atmospheric qualities of her hall, El Juni. Panels depicting Hel often emphasize shadows, cold light, and misted landscapes, creating an immersive visual experience that mirrors the reflective, meditative tone of the original myths. In narrative arcs, she frequently serves as a moral or philosophical guide, a reminder that mortality is universal and that even the mighty cannot escape the consequences of life's rhythms. Through these visual and literary representations, Hel's image is both preserved and reimagined, offering audiences a bridge between ancient myth and contemporary storytelling. Television and film adaptations of Norse mythology have also embraced Hel, though a portrayal is often shaped to suit dramatic narratives or audience expectations. In some cases, she is shown as more formidable or intimidating than in the original sagas, emphasizing tension and conflict. Yet even in these adaptations, creators often retain elements of her impartiality and inevitability. Her presence reminds viewers that mortality is an essential part of existence, and that no power, whether godly, human, or supernatural, can ultimately resist death. In these portrayals, Hel's calm, patient authority is occasionally juxtaposed with the chaos of the living world, creating a contrast that mirrors the original saga's emphasis on her role as custodian of the dead. Hel has also inspired modern philosophical and reflective interpretations. Scholars, writers, and artists often cite her as a symbol of the natural order, inevitability, and impartiality, particularly when exploring themes of mortality in contemporary society. Her presence in modern storytelling offers audiences a chance to engage with death not as a terrifying unknown, but as a natural, inevitable part of life. This perspective aligns closely with the original Norse worldview, in which Hel is not feared for cruelty but respected for her patience, impartiality, and role in maintaining cosmic balance. Through these lenses, Hel becomes both a cultural icon and a figure of quiet meditation, connecting audiences across time to ancient understandings of mortality. Interestingly, Hel's influence in modern media often extends beyond narrative and visual representation into interactive and immersive experiences. Tabletop role-playing games, online story-driven platforms, and even virtual reality adaptations draw upon her authority and presence, allowing participants to confront mortality decision-making, and consequence in ways that echo her mythological essence. Players may negotiate with Hel, encounter her dead underlings, or witness her impartial judgment, all experiences that reinforce the central themes of inevitability, patience, and the natural order. In this way, Hel's modern incarnations are not passive. They actively engage audiences in reflection on life, death, and the rhythms of fate. Even popular culture outside of direct Norse adaptations sometimes references Hel symbolically. Her half-living, half-dead form, her calm yet unavoidable authority, and her association with impartiality and inevitability appear in music, visual art, and literature that explores mortality or the liminal spaces between life and death. These references, while often subtle, demonstrate the lasting resonance of her myth, showing that Hel continues to inspire creativity, philosophical reflection, and artistic interpretation across cultures and media. Importantly, these modern interpretations rarely depict Hel as purely evil or terrifying. Instead, they emphasize her impartiality, her patience, and her essential role as custodian of the dead. In this way, Hel's image remains consistent with her original mythological identity, a figure who represents inevitability and cosmic balance, offering audiences both awe and reflection. Modern media often amplify her visual drama and narrative significance, but the core themes, mortality, impartiality, and the quiet authority of death, remain intact. Through novels, games, comics, films, and art, Hel has transcended her ancient origins to become a symbol accessible to contemporary audiences. She embodies timeless truths about mortality, consequence, and inevitability, while also inspiring creative exploration, emotional reflection, and philosophical inquiry. Her calm, patient authority continues to captivate audiences, reminding us that death is not chaos, but a natural, integral part of existence. In this sense, Hel's presence in modern media serves both as entertainment and as a conduit for timeless wisdom, connecting ancient myth to the reflective and immersive experiences of today. Hel, the Norse queen of the Underworld, is a figure both unique and yet intriguingly familiar when compared with other cultures' depictions of death and the afterlife. While her specific traits, half-living, half-dead, ruler of Eljuni, are distinctly Norse, the themes she embodies resonate across human mythology. The inevitability of death, the impartiality of the afterlife, and the liminal space between life and what comes after. By examining Hel alongside figures from other traditions, we can better understand how cultures conceptualize mortality and the role of death in shaping human experience. In Greek mythology, Hades rules the underworld with a somewhat different emphasis. He oversees the dead, including both the virtuous and the wicked, but his realm is organized into distinct regions: the Elysian fields for the blessed, Tartarus for the wicked, and Asphodel for ordinary souls. Hades himself is often depicted as stern but fair, maintaining order in his kingdom. Unlike Hel, however, he is less liminal in appearance. He is fully alive, often portrayed as regal and authoritative rather than divided between life and death. Nevertheless, both Hel and Hades serve as custodians of the dead, ensuring that souls find their appointed place and that the balance between life and death is preserved. In Egyptian mythology, Osiris occupies a role that combines judgment and resurrection. He is both ruler of the afterlife and a symbol of rebirth, determining the fates of souls based on the weighing of the heart against the feather of Ma'at. Whereas Hel is impartial and does not judge based on virtue or heroism, Osiris represents a moral dimension, rewarding righteousness and punishing wrongdoing. The contrast is significant. Hel's domain is universal, receiving all who die outside heroic halls, while Osiris's realm is selective, moralistic, and highly structured. Yet in both cases, the figure of the underworld ruler embodies inevitability, the continuity of life and death, and the importance of cosmic balance. In Hindu mythology, the goddess Yama presides over the afterlife and the judgment of souls. Like Hel, Yama oversees all who have died, though he is often associated with moral evaluation and karmic consequence. His role emphasizes accountability, reward, and punishment, whereas Hel's impartiality reminds us that death is a natural endpoint, devoid of moral judgment. Both figures, however, share a symbolic function. They mark the transition from life to death, guide the journey of the soul, and embody the inevitability of mortality. Hel's uniqueness lies in her quiet, unjudging patience, a trait that gives her a particularly reflective, meditative presence. Comparisons can also be drawn to Celtic mythology. Figures such as Arawn, ruler of Andun, or the Morrigan, associated with war and fate, share aspects of death and the afterlife with Hel, though often in more symbolic or active roles in the mortal realm. Hel is distinct in her detachment and impartiality, whereas Arawn and the Morrigan may influence battles, fate, or mortal destinies more directly. Hel remains in her halls, overseeing the natural flow of mortality without interference. This subtle restraint emphasizes her function as a reflection of cosmic inevitability rather than as an agent of fate or war. Even in East Asian traditions, parallels can be observed. In Japanese mythology, Yama, Inma in Japanese, oversees the underworld and the judgment of souls, determining their destiny in the cycle of reincarnation. While the cultural context differs, the core concept resonates with Hel's domain, an authority over the dead, a liminal realm separating life from whatever follows, and a symbolic representation of mortality's inevitability. Hel, however, remains notably non-judgmental, emphasizing the impartiality of death rather than the moral evaluation of the soul. Hel's half-living, half-dead form also finds echoes in other liminal or transitional figures worldwide. In some African and Native American traditions, deities or spirits embody thresholds, guiding souls between life and death, maintaining cosmic balance, and reminding mortals of mortality. Hel's visual duality, split between life and death, serves as a powerful symbol of this liminality, emphasizing that death is not a punishment, but a natural and inevitable part of existence. This makes her particularly effective in storytelling, where visual and symbolic cues help audiences reflect on the profound nature of mortality. Across cultures, Hel shares thematic similarities. She governs the dead, marks the boundary between life and death, and symbolizes the inevitability of mortality. What sets her apart is her quiet impartiality, her patient authority, and the universality of her domain. Whereas other underworld figures may judge, reward, punish, or actively intervene in mortal affairs, Hel remains a calm, consistent presence. Her impartiality allows her to embody the natural rhythms of life and death, offering a contemplative perspective rather than a moralistic or fear-inducing one. This comparison also highlights how cultural contexts shape the portrayal of death. In Norse mythology, survival, heroism, and valor are celebrated in Valhalla and Folkvanga, while Hel receives the ordinary and inevitable dead, emphasizing mortality's universality. In other traditions, moral evaluation, rebirth, or the interplay of good and evil often define the underworld. Yet all of these figures share one essential truth. Death is inescapable, structured, and significant, and the beings who oversee it serve as anchors for human understanding of life, consequence, and destiny. By examining Hel across cultures, we gain a deeper appreciation of her uniqueness. She is a figure who represents reflection, meditation, and inevitability rather than moral judgment or dramatic intervention. Her half-living, half-dead form, her patient impartiality, and her calm authority create a powerful symbol of mortality that transcends time and culture. She reminds us that death is universal, natural, and essential, and that life is meaningful precisely because it is temporary. Through these cross-cultural comparisons, Hel emerges as both a distinct and universally resonant figure. She embodies the quiet authority of death, the inevitability of cosmic law, and the liminality of existence. While other cultures emphasize judgment, reward, or intervention, Hel emphasizes reflection, balance, and the natural flow of life into death. In this, she offers a perspective that is simultaneously calming, meditative, and profound, perfectly suited for bedtime storytelling that seeks to immerse the listener in the timeless rhythms of the universe.
Hel, the queen of the Norse underworld, is more than a mythological figure. She is a teacher, a symbol, and a guide for reflecting on life and mortality. Her calm authority and impartial governance of the dead remind us of truths that are both universal and profoundly personal. By contemplating her role, we can draw lessons about the fleeting nature of life, the inevitability of death, and the importance of living with awareness, patience, and acceptance. Hel teaches not through drama or judgment, but through the quiet certainty of a presence, offering guidance that is subtle yet deeply resonant. One of the most important lessons Hel offers is the inevitability of mortality. In a world where gods wield power, heroes triumph in battle, and mortals struggle against fate, Hel remains a constant reminder that death comes to all. She does not discriminate, nor does she act out of malice or favoritism. Every being, from the mightiest god to the humblest mortal, eventually passes into her care. This impartiality encourages reflection. Life is temporary, and its impermanence gives it value. Understanding that death is certain can lead to a deeper appreciation for the present, helping us cherish moments that might otherwise be overlooked. Hel also teaches patience. In El Juni, the dead wait quietly, sometimes for centuries, until their appointed moment arises. This waiting is not passive but deliberate, a reflection of the natural order and cosmic rhythm. Similarly, in life, patience is a valuable virtue. Hel demonstrates that events unfold according to their own timing and that forcing outcomes can lead to imbalance or regret. Her calm, measured authority reminds us that understanding the flow of time and accepting the pace of life can bring serenity, even amidst uncertainty or hardship. Another lesson is the universality of death. While tales of Valhalla or heroic warriors often glorify exceptional deeds, Hel receives all who pass outside the celebrated halls, regardless of status, skill, or valor. In doing so, she embodies the idea that mortality is a shared experience. This reminder fosters humility, empathy, and reflection. Recognizing that all beings, from kings to peasants, gods to mortals, are bound by the same natural laws can encourage kindness, understanding, and perspective in our own lives. Death, Hel demonstrates, is a leveler, impartial and inevitable, emphasizing the interconnectedness of existence. Hel's impartiality also teaches us about balance. She does not punish or reward, she preserves order. By doing so, she highlights the importance of understanding life as a series of interwoven forces rather than as a series of events to control. Her example suggests that acceptance and reflection are more powerful than fear or resistance. Life's challenges, losses, and uncertainties are natural, and embracing them with calm understanding allows for a deeper sense of peace. Hel's lessons are particularly poignant because they are presented not with judgment, but through observation and constancy. Contemplating Hel also encourages reflection on the nature of legacy and remembrance. While the dead in her halls may not actively influence the living, their presence, stories, and memories endure. Life, like Hel's realm, leaves traces that persist beyond immediate perception. In this sense, she teaches that actions, kindnesses, and choices matter, not because they can escape death, but because they contribute to the larger tapestry of existence. Mortality does not diminish meaning, it amplifies it. Hel's realm, quiet and impartial, encourages reflection on how life is lived rather than fearing the inevitability of its end. Hel's presence also reminds us of the importance of contemplation and inner stillness. Unlike other mythological figures engaged in battle, trickery, or heroic deeds, she is calm, steady, and observant. Her authority does not come from violence or dominance, but from understanding and patience. In a modern context, this can inspire meditation, introspection, and mindfulness. By observing Hel's example, we are encouraged to consider our lives thoughtfully, to acknowledge mortality without fear, and to approach challenges with composure and awareness. Another profound lesson is acceptance. In Norse mythology, even the gods cannot escape their fates, and the inevitability of Ragnarok underscores the limits of power and control. Hel embodies the same principle. She does not act to change destiny but ensures its fulfillment. Accepting what cannot be changed is a lesson that resonates across time and cultures. Her calm presence teaches that surrendering to the natural order does not signify weakness. It signifies wisdom and serenity. By embracing acceptance, we find clarity and peace in the face of life's uncertainties. Hel also emphasizes the importance of perspective. The dead she governs may be silent, still, or seemingly inactive, yet their existence is essential to the balance of the cosmos. This perspective encourages reflection on our own lives, even in moments of waiting, uncertainty, or apparent inactivity. There is purpose. Hel's domain teaches that life is not only measured by action or achievement, but by patience, reflection, and understanding of our place in the larger cycle of existence. Finally, Hel's lessons extend to understanding the relationship between fear and respect. While death can be intimidating or sorrowful, Hel's calm authority suggests that mortality is not something to dread but to acknowledge and understand. Respect for life and death alike fosters a sense of peace and groundedness. Her presence in storytelling, in myth, and in reflection encourages contemplation, not terror. By observing her example, listeners can approach mortality with curiosity, reflection, and acceptance, finding beauty in life's impermanence and serenity in the inevitable. In essence, Hel is a mirror for reflection. She teaches that life's value is heightened by mortality, that patience and acceptance are virtues, and that the rhythm of existence is impartial yet meaningful. Her quiet presence, her impartiality, and her role as custodian of the dead provide lessons that are timeless, profound, and comforting. Through contemplation of Hel, we gain insight into how to live fully, reflect deeply, and face mortality with serenity. As we reach the final reflections on Hel, the queen of the underworld, it becomes clear that her significance extends far beyond her mythological role. She is not merely a ruler of the dead or a character in ancient sagas. She is a symbol of inevitability, patience, and the quiet authority of mortality. Hel's domain, El-Juni, her half-living, half-dead form, and her calm governance of the dead serve as profound reminders of life's impermanence, the impartiality of fate, and the balance that exists between existence and the beyond. In contemplating Hel, we are invited to reflect on our own mortality, our choices, and the rhythm of life itself. Throughout Norse mythology, Hel stands apart from the more active, dramatic figures such as Odin, Thor, or Loki. While they intervene, fight, and manipulate, Hel observes. She waits. Her power is expressed through constancy rather than force, through patience rather than speed, and through impartiality rather than favoritism. This quiet authority offers a unique lesson. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in action, but in presence, in understanding, and in the acceptance of natural order. In this, Hel embodies a wisdom that resonates with audiences even in contemporary times, a wisdom that is calming, reflective, and enduring. One of the central themes Hel conveys is the inevitability of mortality. She receives all who die outside the halls of the heroic, the honored, or the exceptional. Kings, farmers, warriors, and the ordinary dead alike find their place under her care. This universality teaches that death is not a punishment, nor a reward, but a natural stage of life. By accepting this, we can view our own lives with clarity and purpose. Mortality is not something to fear, but a force that lends meaning and urgency to our actions, encouraging us to live fully while understanding that life is finite. Hel's calm, impartial presence also invites reflection on patience and acceptance. In El-Juni, the dead wait quietly, aware that their moment in the cosmic cycle will come. Hel's patience mirrors the rhythm of the universe itself, suggesting that events unfold according to their own timing and cannot be rushed or avoided. By observing her example, we are reminded to approach life with composure, to respect the natural flow of time, and to embrace the inevitabilities that cannot be changed. In doing so, we find serenity, even in the face of uncertainty, loss, or transition. Another lesson we can draw from Hel is the importance of balance and perspective. Life, in Norse cosmology, is interconnected with death, fate, and the wider order of existence. Hel embodies the impartiality and constancy required to maintain this balance. Her quiet authority shows that even in the apparent stillness of the underworld, there is purpose, structure, and meaning. Similarly, in our own lives, moments of pause, reflection, and contemplation hold profound value. They allow us to understand our place in the larger cycle of life and to recognize that every action, choice, and experience contributes to the broader tapestry of existence. Hel also teaches us about humility and universality. In her realm, there is no distinction between the mighty and the meek. All are equal before death. This lesson reminds us of our shared humanity and the inherent equality of life and mortality. By contemplating Hel, we are encouraged to approach others with empathy, respect, and understanding, recognizing that the boundaries between life and death, power and vulnerability, are shared experiences that connect all beings. Her impartiality becomes a mirror through which we can see the importance of humility, reflection, and awareness. Furthermore, Hel's liminality, half-living, half-dead, symbolizes the transitional spaces in life, the threshold between beginnings and endings, and the moments in which we pause to reflect. She reminds us that transitions are natural and necessary, and that embracing these moments with mindfulness and patience is a form of wisdom. Just as she governs the space between life and death, we too can navigate our own thresholds with calm awareness, understanding that endings and beginnings are interconnected and part of a larger, meaningful cycle. In modern storytelling and cultural reflection, Hel continues to inspire audiences. From literature to video games, comics, and art, her figure encourages contemplation of mortality, consequence, and cosmic balance. She reminds us that death is not chaotic or fearsome, but structured, inevitable, and deeply meaningful. By engaging with her story, we gain perspective, insight, and a sense of calm that is rare in a world often focused on speed, achievement, and constant activity. Hel's enduring presence across time and media underscores her timeless lessons: patience, reflection, impartiality, and acceptance. As we conclude this journey through the mythology, symbolism, and cultural influence of Hel, it becomes evident that she is far more than a figure of death. She is a teacher, a guide, and a mirror for human reflection. Her calm authority, her impartiality, and her liminal presence offer profound lessons on how to live fully, reflect deeply, and accept the inevitable with serenity. By contemplating Hel, we learn to embrace mortality not with fear, but with understanding, humility, and awareness, finding both comfort and wisdom in the quiet rhythm of the cosmos. In the end, Hel is a reminder that life's impermanence gives it meaning, that patience and acceptance bring peace, and that mortality is universal, impartial, and essential. Her story encourages us to slow down, reflect, and honor both life and death. By embracing her wisdom, we can approach existence with a sense of calm understanding, recognizing the beauty, inevitability, and balance inherent in every moment. Hel, the queen of the underworld, continues to teach us, even in the stillness of thought and imagination, that life is fleeting, death is certain, and the space between them is where true reflection and understanding reside. As we slowly close the story of Hel, the queen of the underworld, it is worth lingering for a final moment in her quiet, shadowed halls. Her presence, patient and impartial, offers a space for contemplation, a place where the mind can rest and reflect on the cycles of life, death, and the universe. Hel's domain, though often depicted as cold and misted, is not meant to frighten. Instead, it invites a gentle awareness, a meditation on the natural rhythms that govern all living things. In this quiet reflection, we are reminded that endings are simply part of a larger flow of existence, and that life's beauty is inseparable from its impermanence. In her half-living, half-dead form, Hel symbolizes the liminal spaces we all pass through, the thresholds between experiences, between youth and age, between moments of joy and times of sorrow. Her calm authority encourages us to embrace these transitions with acceptance, patience, and mindfulness. Just as she waits in El Juni without haste or fear, we too can learn to face the uncertainties and endings in our lives with quiet courage and understanding. This reflection is not heavy or sorrowful. Rather, it is soothing, like a gentle stream that guides us toward inner stillness. Hel's impartiality also serves as a reminder that life is shared. No matter our status, our achievements, or our struggles, mortality is universal. This awareness fosters empathy and humility, encouraging us to honor not only our own journey but the journeys of those around us. By contemplating Hel, we see that life's fleeting nature is what gives it depth, richness, and meaning. We are invited to cherish the moments we have, to reflect on our choices, and to approach each day with intentionality and grace. Finally, Hel's presence invites us to pause, breathe, and simply be. In the quiet of her halls, there is no rush, no judgment, no urgency, only the rhythm of existence itself. This gentle meditation allows us to internalize the lessons of her story, that life and death are intertwined, that mortality is inevitable, and that reflection and acceptance can bring profound peace. As we leave her realm in imagination, we carry with us a sense of calm understanding, a soft awareness of life cycles, and the comforting knowledge that even in endings, there is balance, wisdom, and quiet beauty. In this final moment, Hel whispers a gentle truth: to live fully, to reflect deeply, and to embrace the inevitability of change is to honor the delicate, fleeting, and meaningful rhythm of life itself.